I woke up believing that maybe today would be different. I was 8 years old, standing in our small kitchen, staring at the worn-out shoes on my feet. The front of my left shoe had started to peel away. Every time I walked, it opened like a mouth. I looked at my mom. "Mom, can I get new shoes before school starts?" She barely looked up from making breakfast. "They still work. They hurt my feet." She sighed. "Life isn't fair. You'll learn that someday." I lowered my head. "Okay." A few seconds later, my older brother Ethan walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, everyone has those new sneakers. Can I get a pair?" My mother's face changed immediately. "Of course, sweetheart." She smiled at him. "We'll go shopping after dinner." I looked at my shoes again. Nobody even noticed. That was the first lesson I learned. In our house, asking didn't matter. Only the person asking mattered. My name is Ryan, and for as long as I can remember, love in my family always came with conditions. Those conditions never applied to Ethan. He was the favorite. I was the child who was supposed to understand. Whenever something good happened to Ethan, the whole house celebrated. Whenever something good happened to me, everyone acted like it was simply expected. One Saturday morning, Dad walked through the front door carrying several shopping bags. "Ethan," he shouted. My brother ran downstairs. "Are those mine?" Dad laughed. "Open them." Inside were brand new clothes, expensive sneakers, a gaming console, and a smartwatch. Ethan jumped with excitement. "Thanks, Dad." Dad smiled proudly. "You deserve it." I stood beside the stairs quietly. Dad finally noticed me. "Oh." He reached into one of the bags. "There wasn't enough money to get you anything." "I didn't ask for anything," I replied softly. "Good," he said. "You should learn not to expect handouts." I forced a smile. "I understand." But I didn't. Not really. School became the only place where I felt like I mattered. I studied harder than anyone else. Every test felt like another chance to earn the love waiting for me at home. One afternoon my teacher handed me a certificate. "Ryan, congratulations. You earned the highest grades in your class." The whole classroom clapped. For the first time that week, I smiled. I ran home carrying the certificate carefully so it wouldn't bend. "Dad." He looked up from the television. "What?" "I got first place." He barely glanced at the paper. "That's what students are supposed to do." My smile disappeared. "I thought you'd be happy." "I'll be happy when you stop looking for praise." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "Okay." Then Ethan walked inside carrying a soccer participation ribbon. Mom hugged him immediately. "My little champion." Dad clapped loudly. "I knew you could do it." I stared at my certificate. It suddenly felt heavy. Nobody even asked to see it. I quietly carried it upstairs. That night I taped it above my bed anyway. Maybe one day they would notice it. Maybe one day they would notice me. Birthdays were even harder. When Ethan turned 13, the backyard was full of balloons, music, relatives, and a huge cake. Dad rented a bounce house. Mom hired entertainers. Everyone laughed. "This is the best birthday ever." Ethan shouted. Dad wrapped an arm around him. "You deserve the best." I stood in the corner holding a paper plate. Grandma Rose walked over and smiled sadly. "You've been quiet all day." "I'm okay." She looked into my eyes. "No. You've been pretending for years." I tried to laugh. "I'm really fine." She gently squeezed my shoulder. "You don't have to lie to me." I looked away before she could see the tears forming. A month later it was my birthday. Mom placed a small cupcake on the table. "Happy birthday." Dad nodded without looking away from his phone. We didn't have time to plan anything. Ethan shrugged. "Birthdays aren't that important anyway." I smiled even though my chest hurt. "It's okay." Mom pointed toward the sink. "When you're done, wash the dishes." "Sure." Grandma Rose slipped me a small wrapped box before leaving. "Open it later." When everyone went to bed, I opened it in my room. Inside was a notebook. There was also a handwritten note. "Your voice matters, even when people refuse to hear it. Never stop believing that." I hugged the notebook against my chest. It wasn't expensive. It wasn't flashy. But it was the first gift that made me feel seen. Years passed, but nothing changed. Every report card. Every achievement. Every dream. I kept chasing their approval like it was a finish line I could finally reach. One evening I walked downstairs to get a glass of water. Before entering the kitchen, I heard my parents talking. Dad's voice was calm. "I think Ethan will love the new car." Mom laughed softly. "He absolutely will." "What about Ryan?" Dad asked. There was a short silence. Then Mom answered. "He doesn't need anything." I froze outside the door. Dad chuckled. "You're right. He's always been the easy one." I stood there without moving. The glass slipped from my hand and rolled across the floor. Neither of them noticed. But I did. For the first time in my life, something inside my heart cracked. The years passed, but the words never changed. Whenever I needed help, my parents always had another lesson ready for me. Build character. Figure it out yourself. You'll thank us later. At first, I believed them. I thought they were making me stronger. Then I realized those lessons only belonged to me. Ethan never had to build character. He only had to ask. One evening, I came home from school and found Ethan sitting on the couch with his head in his hands. Dad looked worried. Mom kept pacing around the living room. "What happened?" I asked. Ethan groaned. "I dropped out." "You what?" I asked. "I hated college." Dad immediately stepped in. "Don't judge your brother." I wasn't judging him. "Then stop looking at him like that." I stayed quiet. Mom sat beside Ethan and rubbed his back. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll figure this out." "I wasted the tuition," Ethan whispered. Dad smiled anyway. "Money comes and goes. You matter more." I looked down at my backpack. I wish someone would say that to me just once. A week later, I received an email that changed my life. I had earned a scholarship. I read the message 3 times before running downstairs. "Mom? What is it?" "I got a scholarship." She looked up for a second. "That's nice." "Dad." He glanced over his newspaper. "What?" "I don't have to pay tuition anymore." He nodded once. "Good. I worked really hard." "That's expected." I waited. Nothing else came. No hug. No congratulations. No smile. Just silence. That night, I asked carefully, "The scholarship covers school, but I still need money for books and rent." Dad folded his newspaper. "You'll have to earn it." "I already study all day." "So study and work." "I don't know if I can do both." He shrugged. "Life isn't fair." Mom added, "Building your own future will make you stronger." I forced myself to nod. I understand. Inside, I wanted to scream. A month later, I moved into a tiny room near campus. It barely fit a bed and a desk. The ceiling leaked when it rained. Still, it was mine. Every morning started the same way. Class. Library. Part-time job at a grocery store. Evening classes. Late-night cleaning job. Homework until 2 in the morning. Then everything repeated. One afternoon, while stocking shelves, someone smiled at me. "You look exhausted." I laughed. I forgot what sleep feels like. "I'm Maya." "I'm Ryan." She tilted her head. "You're in my economics class." "I am?" "You always sit in the front." "I usually leave as soon as class ends." I noticed. She handed me a bottle of water. "You should take a break." "I can't." "Why?" "If I stop working, I can't pay rent." She frowned. "What about your parents?" I hesitated. "They're busy." She looked at me for a long moment. "You don't have to pretend." I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've seen that smile before." "What smile?" "The one people wear when they're trying not to fall apart." I looked away. For some reason, talking to her felt easy. "My parents always help my brother." "And you?" "They give me advice." "What kind?" "Figure it out yourself." She shook her head. "That's not help." "I know. Have they always been like this?" I smiled sadly. "As long as I can remember." She stayed quiet for a moment. Then she said softly, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words almost made me cry. Nobody had ever apologized for something they didn't do. Over the next few weeks, Maya became my closest friend. Sometimes we studied together. Sometimes we ate cheap sandwiches outside the library. Sometimes we just talked. One evening she asked, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think your parents love you?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I stared at my coffee. "I don't know." You don't know? I know they love Ethan. And you? I couldn't answer. After a long silence, I whispered, maybe they just tolerate me. Maya reached across the table and gently squeezed my hand. I don't believe that you're hard to love. For a moment, I forgot how tired I was. For a moment, I believed her. Graduation day was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I finally understood where I stood in my own family. I stood outside the auditorium wearing my graduation gown, holding my phone. I checked the time again. Then I called Mom. She answered after several rings. Ryan. Mom, where are you? The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. I know. So, are you close? She hesitated. We're not coming. My heart sank. What? Ethan needs us. I closed my eyes. What happened this time? He had a fight with someone. Mom, this is my graduation. I know. I've worked for this for years. I said I know. Can't Dad come? No. What about you? No. I swallowed hard. I just wanted someone here. Her voice became impatient. Ryan, stop making this harder than it has to be. I only asked you to come. Ethan needs us more. The call ended. I stared at the dark screen. For a long moment, I couldn't move. Around me, families laughed and took pictures together. Parents hugged their children. Flowers filled the sidewalks. Everyone looked happy. Everyone except me. A classmate smiled as she walked past. Ryan, where's your family? I forced a smile. There, running late. She nodded and hurried toward her parents. I watched her disappear into a crowd of hugs. Then I walked inside alone. The ceremony felt like a dream. When my name was called, I walked across the stage. The audience clapped. I smiled for the camera. Inside, I felt empty. I looked across the seats one last time. Maybe they had surprised me. Maybe they had arrived late. Row after row. Nothing. Just strangers. I accepted my diploma. The principal shook my hand. Congratulations, Ryan. Thank you. His smile was warm. It felt strange receiving more kindness from a stranger than from my own parents. After the ceremony ended, people gathered outside. Parents wrapped their children in hugs. Phones flashed everywhere. Smile. We're so proud of you. I knew you could do it. Those words floated through the air like little arrows. I sat alone on a bench with my diploma resting across my knees. I stared at it without saying a word. A familiar voice broke the silence. There you are. I looked up. Maya stood in front of me holding 2 cups of coffee. I figured you'd need one. I laughed weakly. You figured right. She sat beside me. So, they didn't come? I shook my head. They chose Ethan again. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she wrapped one arm around my shoulders. That simple gesture broke something inside me. I kept hoping, I whispered. I know. I thought today would finally matter. It should have. I wasn't asking for presents. I know. I wasn't asking for money. I know. I just wanted them to clap. The tears came before I could stop them. I just wanted them to see me. Maya hugged me tighter. They're the ones who are missing something. It doesn't feel that way. It will someday. I don't believe that. You will. We sat there quietly until the parking lot was almost empty. Finally she smiled gently. Come on. Where? I'm taking the graduate out for dinner. I laughed through my tears. I can't afford dinner. She rolled her eyes. Good thing I'm paying. You don't have to. I know. But I want to. For the first time that day, I smiled without forcing it. That evening I walked into my parents' house. Mom was sitting on the couch. Dad was watching television. Ethan looked perfectly fine. I stopped in the middle of the living room. So? Dad looked up. You're back. I graduated today. I know. You couldn't come? Ethan shrugged. I had a rough day. I stared at him. You look perfectly fine. He frowned. Don't start. I looked at my parents. I spent years working for today. Mom crossed her arms. We already told you why we missed it. And I'm telling you that it hurt. Dad sighed. You're being dramatic. I felt my hands shake. No. I'm being honest. The room fell silent. The house became painfully quiet after I spoke. Dad looked at me with disappointment instead of regret. So, he said, are you done? I took a slow breath. No. I spent years trying to earn your love. Mom frowned. Don't talk like that. Then how should I talk? Dad stood up. You've always had a roof over your head. I wasn't asking for a roof. You had food. I wasn't asking for food. Mom folded her arms. What more did you want? I looked at both of them. I wanted parents. Neither of them answered. Ethan rolled his eyes. Here we go again. I turned toward him. I've never blamed you for being loved. He laughed. You sound jealous. I'm hurt. Same thing. No, I said quietly. It isn't. Dad pointed toward the door. If you're going to argue, leave. I looked around the house one last time. The family photos covered every wall. Most of them showed Ethan smiling between Mom and Dad. In only one picture, I stood at the edge of the frame. That was exactly how my life had always felt. I picked up my backpack. I'll leave. Mom looked surprised. What do you mean? I mean I'm done begging. Don't be dramatic. I'm not. I'll figure things out myself. Dad shrugged. Good. You always said that's how life works. I nodded slowly. I finally believe you. Without another word, I walked out. Nobody followed me. Nobody called my name. The front door closed behind me with a soft click. For some reason, that quiet sound hurt more than any shouting could have. My new apartment was barely bigger than a bedroom. The paint was peeling. The kitchen sink leaked. The windows rattled whenever the wind blew. Still, I smiled. For the first time, I was living somewhere that didn't remind me every day that I wasn't enough. The next morning someone knocked on my door. I opened it carefully. An older man stood there holding a toolbox. You must be the new neighbor. I am. I'm Daniel. I'm Ryan. He smiled warmly. I heard your sink dripping all night. I laughed. So did I. I can fix it. You don't have to. I know. But neighbors help each other. The words caught me off guard. Neighbors help each other. It sounded so simple. Yet it was kinder than anything I had heard at home in years. While he worked, he looked over at me. You just moved? Yesterday. Starting fresh. You could say that. He nodded. Sometimes starting over is the bravest thing a person can do. I smiled. I hope you're right. I know I am. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became someone I looked forward to seeing. Sometimes we drank coffee together before work. Sometimes he shared stories about his own struggles. One evening he asked, "Where are you working now?" "I'm still at my part-time job." "What did you study?" "Business." He raised an eyebrow. "Then why aren't you applying for business jobs?" "No experience." "You'll never get experience if you never apply." "I don't think anyone would hire me." Daniel laughed. "Who told you that?" "No one." "Then why do you believe it?" I didn't answer. Because deep inside, I still heard my parents' voices telling me I wasn't enough. Daniel pointed at me. "Listen carefully. You've survived things that would have broken many people. That means something. I've never thought about it that way. Start thinking that way." The next day, he handed me a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" "A job opening." I looked at it. A growing company was hiring junior business analysts. "I don't think I'm qualified." Daniel smiled. "Let them decide that." A week later, I sat nervously inside the company's office waiting for my interview. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. A woman opened the door. "Ryan?" "Yes." "I'm Olivia." We shook hands. "Come in." The interview lasted almost an hour. She asked about my grades, my projects, my work history. Finally she leaned back. "You've worked 2 jobs while studying full-time?" "Yes." "Why?" "I had bills to pay." She looked impressed. "That tells me more about your character than any resume." I blinked. "No one has ever said that to me." She smiled. "Then they haven't been paying attention." A few days later, my phone rang. "Hello? Ryan, this is Olivia." My heart raced. "Yes? Would love to have you join our team." I closed my eyes. "Really? Congratulations." For the first time in years, I felt like someone believed in me before I had to prove I deserved it. 3 years passed faster than I expected. Every morning, I walked into the office with confidence instead of fear. Every project taught me something new. Every challenge reminded me that my parents had been wrong about me. One afternoon, Olivia called me into her office. "Ryan, have a seat." I smiled nervously. Did I do something wrong? She laughed. "If you had, I wouldn't be smiling." I sat down. She slid a folder across the desk. "Open it." I looked inside. There was a promotion letter. I read it twice. Then a third time. I don't understand. You earned it. I wasn't expecting this. I looked at her. You've worked harder than anyone on this team. I just did my job. You did much more than that. I couldn't stop smiling. Thank you. She stood up and shook my hand. No, Ryan. Thank you for proving that hard work still matters. That evening, I met Maya at our favorite little cafe. She looked at my face and laughed. What happened? Guess. You won the lottery? No. You finally learned how to cook. I laughed. Not even close. Then tell me. I handed her the promotion letter. She covered her mouth. Oh my goodness. She jumped out of her chair and hugged me tightly. I knew this would happen. I didn't. I did. You've believed in me longer than I have. She smiled. That's what partners do. I looked into her eyes. For a second, the noisy cafe disappeared. Maya. Yeah? I don't want to imagine my future without you. She smiled softly. Good. Because I don't plan on going anywhere. A week later, I asked her to marry me. She looked at the ring. Then back at me. Are you serious? I've never been more serious. Tears filled her eyes. Yes. Yes? She laughed through happy tears. Yes. People around us started clapping. Someone shouted, "Congratulations." For the first time in my life, I celebrated something without wondering who was missing. A few months later, I stood in front of a small house. It wasn't huge. It wasn't fancy. But it belonged to me. I unlocked the front door. Maya squeezed my hand. We did it. I smiled. No. I did this because you never let me give up. She rested her head on my shoulder. You earned every brick. As we walked through the empty rooms, I remembered the tiny apartment where I had started over. I remembered every late shift. Every sleepless night. Every painful memory. This house wasn't just a home. It was proof that my past hadn't defeated me. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. The screen showed a number I hadn't seen in years. Mom. I stared at it. Maya looked over. You don't have to answer. I took a deep breath. I think I should. I answered. Hello? Ryan. Her voice sounded unusually cheerful. How have you been? I've been fine. We heard about your promotion. I see. And your house. Who told you? Oh, people talk. I stayed quiet. She laughed awkwardly. Your father and I are very proud of you. Those words felt strange. Proud? Where had that pride been when I graduated? When I worked 2 jobs? When I needed help? I answered calmly. Thank you. We should have dinner sometime. I've been busy. We're family. The word family almost made me laugh. We'll see. She sounded disappointed. All right. The call ended. Maya looked at me. How do you feel? I don't know. Happy? No. Angry? A little. Hurt. I nodded. Mostly confused. A few days later, Dad called. Ryan. Hi. I heard you've done well. I've worked hard. I always knew you would. I closed my eyes. No. He hadn't. Not once. I'm glad things worked out, he continued. We should spend more time together. I asked quietly, why now? What do you mean? You had years. He stayed silent. Then he changed the subject. So, Ethan has been going through a difficult time. There it was. The real reason. What happened? He made some bad investments. I see. He could use a little help. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was predictable. You mean money? Dad cleared his throat. Families help each other. I remembered every time I had asked for help. Every time I had been told to work harder. I replied calmly. You're right. They do. Another long silence filled the call. For the first time, I realized something important. I was no longer the child begging to be chosen. Now they were the ones asking something from me. And this time, the choice belonged to me. A week after Dad called, my phone rang again. This time, it was Mom. Her voice sounded tired. Ryan, can we meet? I looked at Maya. She quietly nodded. I answered, where? Your father and I would like to have dinner with you. And Ethan? He won't be there. I stayed silent for a few seconds. Finally, I said, all right. The restaurant wasn't expensive. It was quiet. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize my parents. Dad looked older. His hair had turned mostly gray. Mom's smile looked forced. They stood when they saw me. Ryan. Hi. Mom tried to hug me. I took a small step back. She lowered her arms. I understand. We sat down. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Thank you for coming. I said I would. The waiter brought water. As soon as he walked away, Mom whispered, we've been having a hard time. I heard. Dad nodded. Ethan lost almost everything. I know. He invested in several businesses. They all failed. And? Dad looked embarrassed. We helped him. With how much? He looked at Mom. She answered quietly. Almost everything we had. I stared at them. Our savings. The retirement fund. The emergency account. The house. The house? Dad nodded slowly. We borrowed against it. I took a deep breath. So now? The bank may take it. The table became quiet. I remembered every time they had chosen Ethan over me. Every sacrifice they made for him. Every excuse. Now those choices had finally caught up with them. Mom reached across the table. Ryan. I gently moved my hand away. She looked down. I understand. Dinner arrived, but nobody touched the food. Dad finally spoke again. I owe you an explanation. I looked at him. I'm listening. He rubbed his hands together. When you were young. You never seemed to need us. I frowned. What? You were responsible. You studied. You worked hard. You always found a way. Mom wiped away a tear. Ethan was different. He struggled. He made mistakes. We thought he needed us more. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So because I handled my pain quietly. You gave him everything? Dad lowered his head. We thought you were stronger. I laughed once. It wasn't a happy laugh. You thought I didn't need love. No. We thought you could survive without as much help. I leaned back in my chair. I survived. But don't confuse surviving with not hurting. Neither of them answered. For the first time in years, they had no excuses left. Mom's voice trembled. Every birthday. Every graduation. Every disappointment. I remember them now. I looked at her. Do you? She nodded. I wish I could change it. You can't. I know. Dad looked directly at me. We failed you. Those 3 words filled the silence. I had imagined hearing them for years. I thought they would fix something. Instead, they only reminded me how late they had come. Dad took a folded paper from his pocket. This is everything we owe. I glanced at it but didn't pick it up. What do you want from me? He answered honestly. We need help. Money? Yes. Mom quickly added, just until we recover. I looked at both of them. Then I asked quietly. When I needed help with rent. What did you tell me? Neither of them spoke. When I asked for book money? Silence. When I asked you to attend my graduation? Mom started crying. I nodded slowly. I remember. Dad whispered. We were wrong. Yes. You were. I took a slow breath before answering. I won't pay your debts. Both of them looked crushed. Mom whispered. So that's it? No. I reached into my briefcase. I already expected this conversation. I placed a business card on the table. Mom picked it up. Sarah. She's an excellent financial counselor. Dad looked confused. I've already spoken with her. She helps families recover from bankruptcy. Mom stared at me. You already planned this. I planned to help. But not the way you expected. Dad looked disappointed. We thought. I know what you thought. You thought I'd write a check. I shook my head. I'm willing to help you rebuild. I'm not willing to rescue you from choices you kept making. The silence that followed felt heavy. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't my silence carrying the weight. It was theirs. A few months passed after that dinner. I heard very little from my parents. Sarah helped them create a financial plan, but rebuilding their lives was much harder than they expected. For the first time, they had to live within their means. For the first time, Ethan had to face the consequences of his own decisions. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Grandma Rose. I smiled before answering. Hi, Grandma. Her voice was weaker than I had ever heard. Ryan. Are you okay? I'd like to see you. My smile disappeared. What's wrong? I'll tell you when you get here. I'll leave right now. The hospital room felt far too quiet. Grandma smiled when I walked in. There you are. I gently hugged her. You scared me. She laughed softly. I've lived a long life. But I'm not ready to lose you. She reached for my hand. I'm proud of the man you've become. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You helped me become him. She smiled. I only reminded you of who you already were. I pulled my chair closer. The doctor says you'll recover. She looked toward the window. The doctors have been kind. But I know my body. I shook my head. Don't talk like that. Ryan. I need you to listen. I nodded slowly. I'm listening. She pointed to a small wooden box sitting beside her bed. Take that. I picked it up. It was old and scratched, with a tiny brass lock that had already been opened. What's inside? My truth. I looked at her. I don't understand. You will. That evening, I opened the box in my living room. Maya sat beside me without saying a word. Inside were dozens of neatly folded letters. Each one had a date. Each one was written in Grandma's careful handwriting. I opened the first letter. Today I argued with Richard and Linda again. Ryan asked for school supplies. They told him to wait. An hour later, they bought Ethan a new bicycle. I told them they were breaking one child while protecting another. They refused to listen. My hands began to shake. I opened another. Ryan came home with the highest grades in his class today. He stood in the hallway for almost 10 minutes holding his certificate because he hoped someone would notice. No one did. I covered my mouth. Maya gently placed her hand on my shoulder. You don't have to keep reading tonight. I do. I opened another letter. Ryan thinks he isn't enough. I wish he knew the truth. The problem has never been him. Tears blurred the words. For years I had blamed myself. I thought I wasn't smart enough. Funny enough. Interesting enough. Lovable enough. Now I realized something heartbreaking. I had spent my childhood trying to fix a problem that had never belonged to me. A week later, Grandma passed away peacefully. The funeral was filled with family members I hadn't seen in years. Everyone spoke about her kindness, her patience, her wisdom. I stood quietly beside her coffin, remembering the notebook she had given me on my birthday. The same notebook still sat on my desk at home. It had become a reminder that at least one person had always believed in me. After the service, Dad walked toward the front of the room. His hands trembled as he faced everyone. I need to say something. The room fell silent. He looked at me before speaking. I failed my son. Nobody moved. I convinced myself I was helping one child who needed me. In reality, I was abandoning another who needed me just as much. Mom stepped beside him, crying openly. There isn't a single day that passes without me wishing I could go back. I missed birthdays. I missed his graduation. I missed years of his life. She looked directly at me. I'm so sorry, Ryan. The room stayed silent. Then Ethan slowly walked forward. His voice was barely above a whisper. They didn't ruin only your life. They ruined mine too. I looked at him. I never learned responsibility because someone always rescued me. I thought that was love. It wasn't. It was dependence. For the first time in my life, I believed he truly understood. 5 years have passed since Grandma Rose's funeral. Sometimes I still take out her notebook and read the first sentence she ever wrote to me. Your voice matters, even when people refuse to hear it. Those words no longer make me cry. They remind me how far I have come. One Saturday morning, I walked into the kitchen of the home Maya and I built together. She smiled as she placed 2 cups of coffee on the table. "Good morning." "Morning." She looked at me carefully. "You're thinking again." I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "It always is." I reached across the table and held her hand. I was remembering where all of this started. She smiled softly. "And where did it end?" I looked around our home. It didn't end. It became something better. Before she could answer, a tiny voice echoed through the hallway. "Daddy." I turned just in time to catch my little daughter as she ran into my arms. She wrapped her arms around my neck. "You're awake." "I've been awake." She giggled. "I want pancakes." I laughed. "That's a very serious request." "It is." Maya smiled. "I think someone spoiled." I kissed our daughter's forehead. "No. She's loved." There was a difference. A very important difference. While we ate breakfast, my daughter looked at me. "Daddy?" "Yes?" "If I get a bad grade?" I waited. "Will you still love me?" The question froze me. For a second, I was a little boy again. Standing in my parents' house. Wondering what I had done wrong. I put down my fork and looked into her eyes. "Come here." She climbed onto my lap. I smiled. "I will love you when you get good grades." She nodded. "I will love you when you get bad grades." Her eyes grew wider. "I will love you when you win. I will love you when you lose. I will love you when you're happy. And I will love you when you're sad." She wrapped her little arms around me. "So, always?" I kissed her forehead. "Always." She smiled the biggest smile I had ever seen. "I love you too, Daddy." Maya quietly wiped away a tear. A few weeks later, my phone rang. "Dad." I answered. "Hello." "Hi, Ryan. How are you?" "I'm doing better. I found a job." I smiled. "Congratulations." "It isn't glamorous." "It doesn't have to be." He laughed softly. "I finally understand that." There was a comfortable silence. Then he said, "I wanted to thank you." "For what?" "You didn't rescue us. You forced us to stand on our own. I hated you for it at first." "I know. But now I understand why." I looked out the window. "I'm glad." Mom's voice appeared in the background. "Tell him we're proud of him." Dad chuckled. "She says she's proud of you." I smiled gently. "Tell her thank you." Those words no longer felt like something I had waited my whole life to hear. They were simply words. My happiness no longer depended on them. A month later, Ethan knocked on my front door. When I opened it, I almost didn't recognize him. He looked healthier. Calmer. He held a small toolbox. "Busy?" "Not really." He smiled awkwardly. "I've been working as an electrician." "Really?" "Yeah. I finally earned my first promotion." I smiled. "Congratulations." He looked down. "I wanted to tell you something." "I'm listening." "I'm sorry. For everything. I spent years taking what should have belonged to both of us." I shook my head. "You were a kid." "I wasn't always." "No. But you're taking responsibility now." He nodded. "I want to earn my own life." "You already started." For the first time, we shook hands like brothers instead of strangers. That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I stood beside my daughter's bed. She was holding her favorite teddy bear. A small smile rested on her face. I quietly pulled the blanket over her shoulders. Then I whispered the promise I wished someone had made to me when I was her age. "You will never have to compete for my love. You will never wonder if you're enough. You will never earn what should already belong to you." I switched off the bedroom light and stood in the hallway for a moment. I realized something that took me most of my life to understand. Revenge would never have healed the little boy I used to be. Success alone wouldn't have healed him either. The thing that finally set me free was choosing to become the parent I had always needed. I stopped waiting for my parents to change my past. Instead, I changed someone else's future. And that became the greatest victory of my life.